Committee to order. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Supervisor Hogan, Supervisor Leggett, thank you. Any comments, changes, modifications? Seeing none, then we'll approve that motion. What I'd like to do is move our agenda around just a little bit. Dr. Duffy would like a few minutes to update us on what's going on at SUNY Adirondack. Dr. Duffy, with no objections from the committee, I should ask first. Seeing that, Dr. Duffy, it's all yours.
Great, thank you. I appreciate you giving me a few minutes. I just thought it would be helpful to update you on where we are for our fall restart planning, which is evolving every day. We had a wonderful meeting yesterday with Janelle Jones and Pat Belden to consult with them on various health and safety protocols that we're considering and get advice from them. So we really appreciate their help and collaboration, and they very readily offered their support as we move on in our planning. Yesterday, the governor did release the phase 4 guidelines for higher education, which is helpful so that we can get our plans moving along. He did delegate the authority to approve our plans to SUNY, which should expedite our opportunity to move forward and be able to more publicly announce to our students and our community on our plans for instruction. The faculty are busily planning their courses for the fall, with every faculty member having a contingency plan should we be in a position at some point in the fall semester to move back to entirely remote. At this point, it will be a mixed kind of model and subject to the approval of SUNY, of course, but we will continue to offer many of our courses in a remote fashion with some smaller in-person classes for those labs that are more hands-on experiences. There's a lot of more work to come on this, and we'll keep you posted, but we are busily moving forward, and we will, of course, will be open for business in the fall in a variety of ways. We're going to gradually start bringing some employees back on campus over the course of the summer, which is really a good opportunity to sort of test pilot our procedures, our protocols, so that we'll be ready for the fall semester. Our budget, we haven't received any additional guidance from the state on any potential state aid reductions. So we're just moving forward with the budget that we did present to the Joint Committee a few weeks ago, with the understanding that there are some contingency budgets that we're also creating. And the resolution that we'll be presenting to our board on Thursday, and then ultimately to both county boards of supervisors in June and July, will indicate, there'll be language in there that SUNY has given us that indicates the authority of the Division of Budget to be able to come back and reduce our aid at any point, and therefore we would need to have a different budget going forward. So just as a reminder, the budget did reflect a 15% reduction in state aid, and we're still hearing various numbers, so it's hard to really know where that will land. The good news is we did get the ability to access our CARES Act institutional portion of the funds. As a reminder, the feds passed the CARES Act back at the end of March. There's two portions of the funding. In total, SUNY Adirondack is eligible for about $2.5 million. Half of that money had to go directly to students, which we have just started allocating those funds to our most under-resourced students this week, after going through several iterations of preparation and a lot of verification processes that we needed to put in place. So we're thrilled to be able to at least help our students who are in most need. The second half of the funds was to come directly to the institution to help cover some of the expenses related to COVID, not only what we've already incurred, but what we anticipate incurring going forward. We just got the guidance on that last week. Our finance team is looking through to better understand what we can spend the money on, how that might help us, again, to relieve some of the expenses we incurred during the COVID, the spring semester, and even now. And then again, as we anticipate ramping up for the fall, the investments that we're going to need to make for health and safety protocols, technology, et cetera, So we're glad to at least be able to access that fund. Those funds are about 1.4 million because we had a little bit of extra money because of a federal grant program. So that's where we are with budget. We still have quite a bit of work to do in terms of continuing to look at ways to cut expenses. And of course, enrollment is a big driver of our revenue. Our summer enrollment, we're in summer session right now. Our next summer session will start July 6th. And we have started to close the gap of, we were down compared to last year, but we are seeing, although more students take less students, but the students we have are taking more credits, which is a good thing. And we still have our next summer session to be able to increase some of that enrollment. So we're feeling a little bit better about where we are with summer enrollment, which of course does impact our revenue. Our fall enrollment is slow. That seems to be the trend across higher education in general. Most students are kind of hesitating to make any sort of commitment anywhere until they know precisely what a college is going to be doing with their instruction. And we're seeing that trend with us as well. Plus, we're comparing kind of apples to oranges. The way we onboard students now in a remote environment is very different than how we would in person. So the numbers are much slower coming in. So we don't, it's just too early. And as soon as we can announce with more specificity for students on how all of our courses are going to be delivered, I think we'll continue to see that pattern. Our goal is by mid-July that our master schedule would be completely updated with all of the accurate information that students need to make their decision. And we would anticipate then that registrations would start to pick up at that point as we're able to share information with students. So I just wanted to give you a few updates on where we're at, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from anyone else that might be on the line today? Chris, thank you. I appreciate your time. Look forward to our next update.
Great, thank you. Be well, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
And I see John. I thought I saw Ed. Oh, there he is. Good morning, gentlemen. I will turn the floor over to you. Talk about our economic development activities.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning. To start off with the question of unemployment data, we have received the latest unemployment data, and I will have John here to be our technician from our perspective here this morning to show on the screen the unemployment statistics from around the state. Most importantly, for our capital region is about 13%. For Warren County, it's approximately 15%. And for Washington County, just a little bit underneath 15%. Obviously, that takes into account the number of restaurants of people that have not come back to work yet. And again, this is data through May, so it's not reflecting, Mr. Chair, the various new phases that Warren County and Ryan have been working on to open up as early as we can. So I would expect that as we go forward here during the summer and fall, there will be a decrease in that unemployment. That is going to be offset, I believe, somewhat by the various concerns of some businesses as to whether or not they're going to open immediately or wait a while as they bring back, whether it's inventory, supplies. As an example, when it was announced that restaurants would be available and open last week, many of the restaurants were not necessarily prepared in terms of their food supplies and their vendors. So they're beginning to open up rapidly today, tomorrow, and Friday. A number of restaurants will be open and have not been open, and that they are bringing some staff back. We still have that issue that Liza has been talking about relative to individuals not necessarily wanting to come back to work quite yet. Small little example of that in the restaurant trade is the New Way Lunch on South Street did not have sufficient employees to return. So right now they're operating and moved some of the staff in Glens Falls to Queensbury is open. Also because Queensbury had a drive-in, so drive-through. So that's why that remained open while downtown it was closed. Warrensburg has been doing very, very well since they have been under operation. So there you have the map. Rather than my ugly face, you can see the various components of where we are from a regional basis of the North Country at a little bit over 15%, our capital region, and then down onto the Long Island has been is close to 17%, and then out in the far west. So that just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of that particular item here. Any questions on that or comments on the unemployment factors? I don't think that that is a surprise. It's disappointing, but it should not be a surprise. I think that we are on our way forward here in Warren County with the energy of the task force here, as well as with the hospitality to make it safe. We continue to see safeness and health issues being concerned when people are looking to come up to Warren County, and I think that through a collective effort, we've done very, very well, and that's a thank you for those that were directly involved with that. I'm turning over to a little bit of...
Can I ask a question there, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman?
Yeah.
Thanks. Ed, how does this compare with the 2007-2008 downturn?
2007-8 is just about, it may be just a tad higher, Craig, than what it was in 2007 and 2008.
Thank you.
Back then was about 12, I think about 12%, 11, 12% in that area for our region. This is a little bit higher.
Around 2012, we got up close to 11% in the wintertime.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was that no snow winter that I know that many up county restaurants, taverns, hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts were stymied by the lack of snow that year, and also to Luzerne and the lack of snowmobiles in the whole North Country in 2012.
I'm sorry, I'm going to just let the committee know I can't really see any hand waving or anything like that based on the reduced.
Yeah.
So if someone has a question, please don't hesitate to interrupt while the screen sharing is happening. Thanks, Ed.
Okay. Moving on to another factor that I wanted to mention as some good news is, excuse me, allergy season. As we come into the desire and look for employment opportunities and so forth, the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics for the first time has developed a series of clusters of employment centers for regions, and based on their formula, the County of Warren has been designated out of the 500 areas that have medical device firms or some semblance of medical device firms and instruments, is rated number one. This statistic was done through the Bureau of Labor Statistics and through working with the Center for Economic Growth. And as you can see, they're identified the top 10, if you will, ranging from Oregon eastward in the Middle East, in the middle part of our country, to Warren County, which has a ratio. We currently have 1,500 to 1,600 people that are employed at our facilities at Benton Dickinson, the former C.R. Bard, Angio Dynamics, Medline, which purchased the NAMIC wing of the catheter business from Angio, and Delcath, who continues to remain in operations. They continue to do very well in developing a series of innovative patents. And the expectation is that at some point, there should be some operation in some form or another. But they are very active in the patent development and the recognition of patents in that area. So this is something that is important for us to continue to highlight. I know you've heard me speak about it, and we've recognized that, but this is a significant amount of diversified medical device firms that are located in Warren County. And therefore, we want to continue to focus, and are speaking with a firm currently that has expressed interest in it, that again is a medical device firm in our area. But also we want to meet with individually the medical device firms, which we do regularly, but also to see specifically as to how the virus has affected their operation from a supply networking, and see if there's an opportunity for us to reach out to some of their suppliers in order to have them consider our region as possibly relocating or locating to be closer to their sources. And of course, besides what Medline is doing with the catheter portion of the angiodynamic business, they are also the leading supplier of hospital and medical supplies in the country. They are in the top 100 of Forbes. They're a $10 billion industry, and they are located, they purchased one of the two buildings of angiodynamics. So that not only brings diversity to our area, but also gives us another opportunity to work with a company that may be able to assist us in identifying some of their suppliers that may have an interest in locating back into our region. So that's a positive. I wanted to have some positive news here to say today relative to our industry. I also want to recognize the fact that just like our businesses opened in phases, we're going to see various businesses in the industrial and manufacturing opening somewhat in phases. Some are a little cautious of bringing back all of their employees at once because of the number of issues dealing with their supply chain is not that effective right now. And so you've got an inventory issue, supply issue with some of these manufacturing and industrial areas. Others may have undertaken very early full production, and they're in a situation where they may have a additional amount of inventory, which therefore they are reluctant to bring back a full set of their employees through the area. And our industry is diversified. So what transpires in the paper and wood industry of Finch locally in South Glens Falls, Irving, and International Paper in Ticonderoga, and Joe Ricuvio down with Morcan and Greenwich may vary versus another particular industry that we have into our area as well. We also note in that area, as much as elective surgery has now been back for several weeks, the hospitals throughout the country still are maintaining significant deficits. In the state of Maine, the Maine Center Hospital, which is kind of a enlarged Albany Med that has developed affiliation, has had losses of up to $250 million. In our particular region, hospitals collectively have lost about $100 to $150 million at this point. So while we see spurts ahead in our economy and our tourism industry through a collaborative effort, and your marketing is working very well, it is going to be not one big shot of all our industry and manufacturing coming out at once. It will be phased in over the next several months as we go forward in responding to our crisis that we've had here in our country. And I know that there's a great effort underway, and we continue to work with the industries to see how we can be helpful to them, as well as in the final few days of the payroll protection plan here. We want to make sure that those small businesses have had an opportunity to go through the payroll protection. There's been considerably more success this round with small businesses, and many banks, large banks as well, have been helpful in moving us forward in that area. So I believe that there's a lot of positive notes that have been transpiring here that last month, and certainly the outlook, I think, is greater in a positive sense than it was a month ago, and certainly 60 days ago. So we could, John, we could take our mapping down at this point. So there we go.
So Ed, are you all set?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions for you, but I'll save that until see if anyone from the committee has a question they'd like to ask. Mr. Moore.
Sorry, I'm not really on the committee. I just wanted to throw out, I don't know if Ed or Liza is speaking later, but there was some news that came over last night regarding visas, H-2Bs, H-4s,
Yes.
H-1Bs, J-1s, L-1s. The president has nixed all of them. What effect is that going to have?
I think that there's a little bit of confusion on the one area with those involved in the professional technical areas. I'm hearing two conflicting stories from what the president had stated, indicating that there was going to be some exceptions for this, and then the rules are rolled out that doesn't appear to have that exception in there. That would have an effect, particularly in the Northeast in terms of technology, with those countries that affected on individuals that have been working here on a regular basis. Ryan, from that, I'll defer to the tourism area as to how that affects. We know that it's going to have a negative effect. There's no question about it. I was under the impression that there was going to be some consideration in certain areas for overseas individuals to be coming over here to help out, even if it was going to be later this year to help out for this fall. But at this point now, it doesn't. I think that there's a concern from some of the medical communities and with the sports teams now is that where this virus is going. So I think that may have combined into this, although Spain seems to be recovering very well. And that was one element where there were a number of workers that could be available to come over to assist us. Eastern European countries, there doesn't seem to be as much outbreak as predicted there. So I was a little surprised as to the broadness of the of the edict by the president yesterday with this, which I think in the summer and fall here has a disproportionate negative effect on Warren County. There's no question about that.
Is that where it's coming from? Is from a COVID perspective, or is it an immigration policy perspective?
I think you might be able to include both of them together. It depends on. Some would say that the percentage of immigration issue would be higher than the issue of health area, particularly as you're seeing a downtrend in Eastern Europe and some other areas over there. We seem to be having the spikes in our country in those areas that opened up a little bit earlier, and now we're seeing this in the sports field as well. But I do think that from a medical perspective, there has been a number of doctors expressing concerns of allowing individuals coming over there. There's now claims that there may be various strains of this COVID-19. Take your pick as to which answer you want, Ryan. I think the bottom line is it's not positive for Warren County in terms of this tourism issue. Obviously, he did exempt this in the area for the farming agriculture community, which is helpful to Washington County. There's no question about that. But I was quite frankly surprised that there was this blanket across.
Yeah, me too, because I thought he didn't think COVID was a problem. Enough said.
Right.
Thanks. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Ed, I do have a couple. One I'll save for later. It's going to lead into Liza. But you and I have talked about it before, that one of the things that this pandemic has taught us and our business leaders, and for sure, is the issue of expanding supply chains. And the opportunity is for us, and you've mentioned it, to bring different industries here closer to help with the supply chain from our own manufacturers. How far are we reaching out to other areas to see if we can satisfy some supply chain needs from maybe the Albany area, maybe Massachusetts, maybe central New York? I'm not sure what the opportunities are, but I'm thinking that there is some opportunity. Not sure how well.
I think there's greater opportunities. We go back to one word: infrastructure. Warren County, and we've talked about this in the past, has a major deficiency in warehouse space. So if you're going to reach out to suppliers, they're going to ask, okay, where can we locate, and do you have any buildings that are available that are modern in terms of temperature control and so forth. And until very recently, we did not have this. Native Textile, the former Native Textile building on Corinth Road, is a perfect example of what's happened under the leadership of the JAG group. They purchased that building after the building being vacant for 10, 12 years. It's a 120,000 square foot building, and that entire building is now filled with 3 tenants. One tenant is manufacturing, and that's Adam Gray from Sheet Metal, and the other 2 are Angiodynamics and Medline is taking the other component. So that building is filled. As a result of that, the ownership of JAG went in front of the Queensbury Planning Board last week to ask for approval for them to develop up to 4 to 5 warehousing spaces on the 33 acres that they purchased. That location is perfect for exactly what we are trying to accomplish, Mr. Chair. Its proximity to the Northway and to some of these areas that I've mentioned is exactly perfect expansion. There's also some warehousing that is going up on Luzerne Road that if you travel by there, you'll see some of the structure going up presently now. That also is a positive for Warren County. So now we have infrastructure getting in place so that we can go out, not with a worrisome look at a person says, well, I want to move in tomorrow. Where can I go? The capital region certainly is building some warehousing space, but I think that this is a growing area. We talked to a couple of contractors and developers that are interested in going forth with this. The unique thing that Native Textile and the group of JAG did is this was all on speculation. They invested several $1 million in improvements to the building with no lease at all in sight, with the confidence of the area, and they were able to fill that within a period of 18 months. And so that's a positive sign for our area. And that's why they've gone ahead and are in the process of getting their approvals from the town of Queensbury to build 4 or 5 warehousing spaces ranging anywhere from 15 to 20, up to 50, 60,000 square footage of space in that area. So that provides us with the proper tool to go out and certainly we're engaged in that area now. And even if they locate outside of Warren County, our goal is Warren County, they are helping our businesses that are located within Warren County if they locate within Washington, Saratoga, or even the Capital Region. The Capital Region has the added luxury. We have the great benefit of Interstate 87, the Northway. The Capital Region is right there at the crossroads between the Thruway, the Northway, the Mass Turnpike, as well as I-88 going southwest into the Binghamton area as well, and out to Ohio and so forth. But there's certainly calls on a weekly basis. We get calls for consideration of existing warehouse space due to the fact that construction tends to be rather high at this point. That's the only way we're going to be able to go, because there is no really existing warehousing space remaining that is sizable that can be refurbished. So new construction is going to have to come about.
So Ed, just one follow-up. Is there any chance we can convince the JAG group to go further north into the park along the northwest?
Yeah, I think so. But again, I think what they look at first is the potential of the areas and where your suppliers are going to be going here. I think that with their advancement with the planning board in Queensbury, I think certainly that would give them greater confidence in looking at the area. The Peckham family, where Etain is located, also the town of Chester has worked very hard over the years, Fred and now Craig, and trying to assist and fill that. That would be an ideal location for some additional warehousing to go in that location. It's just a few minutes off of the Northway, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for locations that are right off the Northway, particularly with the Canadian trade. So we don't rule out that. And as I said before, the Peckham piece of property has been APA approved, and we certainly will be working with Chester and the supervisor to see what we can do to bring in some warehousing up into that area. Again, that's a need. Warehousing does not produce as many jobs as we would like, Mr. Chair, but it is an important component of our business development in Warren County.
Great, I agree. Thanks. Just one follow-up from me. We talk about attracting businesses up here. You and I were at a conference in Albany months ago before this pandemic hit, and the major focus was on workforce. And I know this is going to lead into Liza, but how are we stacking up to other regions who we're competing with to try to attract businesses in terms of our ability to provide workforce?
I'll answer quickly, and then let Liza, that's a good pass on the baton here. We have one of the best and most productive workforces in New York State, in Warren County, in our region. You continue, and that does very well. We also have a lot of natural qualities of people wanting to relocate in the area. It still is difficult to find, because of the competition out there, difficult, as an example, a couple of local major industries, in order for them to find the proper fit from their perspective, as well as through their job search. It takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to fill that position on a professional, technical level to do that. It's important that the workforce board is being reconstituted here. I think that becomes an important element and wing of economic EDC to assist, and specifically in finding those areas where we have a need and where we can fill that need, Mike. And it's really kind of on industry basis that may change, and that may change in terms of the demand of that particular industry now as a result of what's transparent here in the last 90 days and so forth to do it. But that certainly is something that EDC will work collaboratively with Liza and the Workforce Development Board.
Like I said, yeah, I know it's important, and Liza's everywhere all the time trying to figure out where she's going to get people to help us out. So are there any other questions for Ed before we turn it over to Liza? With that being said, Ed, thanks. John, good to see you. Thanks. Liza, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ed and John, for doing some of my work for me and saving me some breath as I was going to share some unemployment numbers too. I'm happy to pick up on that now. I was going to go through the agenda with the resolution requests first and then updates later. Chairman, whatever you would like me to do.
Whatever your preference is, Liza, that's
okay.
Fine.
All right, I'll go through the agenda then. So first on the agenda is reappointing 3 Workforce Development Board members. So our representatives from SUNY Adirondack, Glens Falls Hospital, and one of our electrical workers unions their terms are ending on June 30th. And so my request is to reappoint them for a new term, those 3 members. That is the first resolution request.
Thanks, Liza. We need a motion. Is that Supervisor Hogan? Second? Supervisor Bramer?
Mike.
You.
I'll second. Yep.
Any discussion for Liza? Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you, Supervisor Wild. Liza, thanks for bringing this forward. How's it going with the Workforce Development Board?
Thank you, Supervisor Bramer, for asking. I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your question.
Just wanted to say, what's the status and how are the other, don't we have this in collaboration with other counties?
Yes. So thank you for asking. We have had 9 resignations since February. And some of those weren't, so there's some from each county. So we are going through some growing pains right now, but I do feel like it's absolutely necessary to get all systems aligned for our economic recovery efforts. I'm excited that we're reappointing 3, but then we have 3 more seats to fill. So after today, with the 4 that I'm proposing today, then there's definitely room for 2 more seats to be filled, and I'm happy to share the requirements for those 2 seats for if anybody's interested in nominating someone.
Thanks. Yeah, I saw that there were it looked like there were different categories of people that we have to find to fill those spots. So yes, please send me that list. Thank you.
Will do.
And I hope that we can really get on the same page going forward with the board.
Me too.
Thanks.
Any other questions about these appointments for Liza?
Mike, I have a question.
Rachel, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Liza, is this something that maybe Don could get out like to the public regarding these openings? I mean, I think it would be great to be able to get those requirements and the different skill sets that you're looking for, but it's a rare opportunity to have so many positions to fill on this, and you're doing a great job. But I'd like to reach as many people as possible. Is that something you'd be supportive of?
Well, currently, I'll share with you what we're doing currently, and then certainly if the challenges are still there, I'm happy to open the net wider, cast the net wider. So Mr. Biddle and I are currently working on, really Mr. Biddle's taking the lead from the Adirondack Regional Chamber with vetting some folks and assessing interest levels and commitment levels. We want to make sure that these are folks who can commit to the quarterly meetings as well as the subcommittee meetings that they will have. So currently that's working out for us. There has been some interest from some supervisors to make sure that we have representation from other areas in Warren County as well. So those are conversations I'm having right now. I do appreciate Supervisor Sieber that suggestion very much, and we'll definitely take it into consideration if we have a challenge filling those other 2 seats.
Understood. You're the expert, Liza. Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Chairman. Liza, do we currently have any requirement that there be any representation from within the park? Somebody that understands the challenges that the businesses that are in the park face?
Right. I think that's a great question. I can look into that a little bit more. Our current openings are for two private sector folks from Warren County, and all they need to have is at least 2 employees and have hiring capacity. And so I'm happy to think a little bit further together about who might be great to represent the areas that you're concerned about.
Is this something, committee, that we should consider passing on to legislative and rules and asking for at least one of our positions to be necessarily somebody who's within the park? Ryan, yeah.
It would be a matter of county policy. The state, it's state and federal regulations. So this is the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act, which is federal legislation, sets out a framework, and then the state Department of Labor develops a framework that's specific to the state. So the requirements for all of these board members, they are fairly specific as to the types of board members that you have, but it doesn't contemplate geography. Within the workforce development area. If we wanted to have a geographical requirement for our appointees, it's very much something that this board would do as their own thing. So coming from legislative and rules, it wouldn't be so much a change in federal or state policy. It would be our own policy based on the economics.
Right. Well, that's what I was asking. Is that something we wanted to consider asking them to look at in terms of, just represent fair and equitable representation for the county on this board? There are some very definite challenges that businesses and employees within the park face. Do we want that voice at this table? Yeah, John.
Can I say something? John, this is John Wheatley. I've been on the workforce board for quite a while. So it's a situation where in recruiting people to serve on the board, there's a time commitment involved. So the committee or the workforce board itself is open to anybody who can serve that role and be able to make the meetings and things of that nature. Is that legislated in there that certain people come from a certain geographic area? But certainly from a county perspective, as Ryan's saying, we can make that a desired goal from the county's representation, that we have somebody on the board who has a business in the park or knows the park issues very well. But it's not, it's legislated, it's not in the bylaws of any kind, but it can be definitely part of our own recommended set of criteria.
John, this is Mike. I'm curious that you've been on the board. If you have any feeling that the park has been underrepresented in terms of the issues and the actions that the board has taken?
There hasn't been anybody that's really been from a business in the park in some time. I mean, that would be definitely a great thing. We have a couple, maybe we can make some focused outreach to certain people. I mean, a lot of the workforce issues. I mean, that would be a great idea, I think. But there hasn't been anything up to date in terms of somebody who I can remember. And a lot of these are the larger industries. It's the manufacturers, it's the hospital, it's just, it's the larger institutions that frequently are populating on the board. But smaller businesses from the Adirondack, I think they'd be more than happy to see that diversity and that included.
Thank you, John. Liza, I'm in support of this. I'm not sure what others in the committee are feeling, but I would think that we do need to have some small business representation, someone who is least aware of what's going on at the park. But I'm going to leave this to you, and you will come back with nominations for us to consider in the future, right, to appoint to the board.
Absolutely. I'm hoping to do 2 more this summer. And I would like to piggyback on what Administrator Moore said, that, there are federal and state requirements, and it is Section 107 in WIOA Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. If anybody wants to see that, I'm happy to share the link to that. About what the requirements of the board members are for private educational entities, et cetera, so that we can fit in a park representative into what the regulations require.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Not so much a question, but Liza, if you could just send that info to Amanda or send it out to the board, that would be great. So all our supervisors could see it. That
Will
would be
do.
wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah, I think this is really important that we have worked to fix the workforce development board, so to speak, not fix in terms of arrange so that we get priority, but fix it so that it's actually working and focused on what we need as a county. And workforce is key. It's key to help attract businesses, and it's going to help us survive. And Liza, I know we're going to talk about workforce in general, but there's a big issue with jobs right now. We have a lot of open jobs and a lot of employers, especially
Yes.
up on the lake and in our tourism industry that are struggling. But I don't want to derail you, so I'm going to turn this back over to you, right? So.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so I just want to make sure we get through these resolution requests. The first one being to reappoint the 3 members, and then I can move on to the second one.
I'm glad you're paying attention for me. So I'm going to end the discussion if there's no other questions on this first resolution, and that is to reappoint the 3 existing members. No other questions. Can I see a sign of hands for those that are approving? 1, 2, 3 is all I
I'm
could
yes,
see.
Mike,
Can you
too.
help?
Sorry, you're not getting my hand, but yes.
Any opposed? So I'll consider that motion approved. Liza, on to the next.
Thank you, Chairman. The second one is to appoint a new member. Maureen Grabrowski was nominated by Mr. Michael Biddle from Adirondack Regional Chamber. And Maureen works for Homestead Funding. She oversees 7 loan offices, and she's been in the industry for about 20 years. And so we are recommending for her to replace Karen Nguyen. Karen from Umicore resigned in February.
I'll make a motion to bring it.
Chairman, I think you're on mute.
I can second. I don't know her.
He keeps going.
Oh, I'm muted too. Mike, you're muted.
We didn't hear any of
I
that.
saw first,
was
I
having
was
technical-
calling for a second and no one could hear me. So I apologize. Again, I'm struggling with my mute button. This time it's off instead of on when I was not expecting it. So the motion's on the floor. Any questions? And moving forward, let's have a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is approved.
Mr. Wild.
Is it going
Mr.
forward?
Wild, I got a message from Ms. Seaver. She just wanted me to make sure that her vote was recorded as a yes on this.
Thank you, Amanda. And I'm glad we got that for Rachel. Liza, going forward.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So I just wanted to share some general employment updates and what I've been working on. Again, I want to thank Ed and John for touching on the unemployment numbers. So if we look at percentages and then break it down further to numbers, in February 2020, we had about 2,500 people unemployed, and that's increased by about 6,000. So we have around 9,000 in the Glens Falls metro area. Certainly, there are the numbers vary by county and metro area based on what Department of Labor tracks. And we will have more data within the next week as they release more specific May numbers. So I'm currently referencing April 2020 numbers. We are trying to focus on the businesses that have the most positions to fill right now. So, and in particular, when the hospitality industry and how the lack of J1 visa workers is impacting us. One of the other things that I read that the president, in his executive order, last night that I read, is that his hope perhaps was focusing on more jobs for our citizens. However, the challenge is that many of our residents will not do the low wage work, such as housekeeping, which is a job that many of the resorts and hotels are trying to fill here. So what I'm doing, you may have seen on the Warren County Facebook page, and thank you, Don Lehman, for getting it out for me regularly, highlighting the places that need to fill several positions. So visiting these businesses, taking photos, pictures, and interviewing their employees about what they enjoy about working there. I think it's really important that our job seekers see the benefits and the perks of working at these places. Even if it's a lower wage job, we're asking that businesses are creative and incentivizing working for them. So for example, one business is contemplating offering a bonus at the end of the season if workers who sign on stay with them through the end of the season. So we have to be really creative in incentivizing workers to return and to get off of that extra $600 of unemployment. Last week, we were advocating a lot for assembly representatives and state representatives to advocate to the state to release the summer youth employment funds. That's millions of dollars that goes to help low-income youth workers. And we pay those wages through the TANF fund. So that means that businesses don't have to cover that cost for youth workers. And so we have not received any updates yet. There's speculation for why the state is holding that money, whether it's because of the state budget crisis or whether it's because of health concerns and liability concerns with youth workers. I'm not sure, but if we don't get that funding released, I would say this week, I do not see us being able to do a summer youth employment program. And I was prepared to offer a variety of services, whether it's virtual job shadowing and virtual job readiness programs with outside work sites and work sites that will offer safe guidelines for youth employees. So currently what we're doing is encouraging youth to apply for the jobs that exist, separate and apart from summer youth employment program. I'm really trying to get our youth counselor and other folks who engage with youth to get them to apply to the resort jobs that are out there, because there are dozens of them, if not hundreds, that need to be filled. And many of the hotel and resort workers are having a difficult time, many of them cleaning rooms themselves, managers and owners. And we definitely need the youth workforce to help out. So we're highlighting why those places are great places to work. So that's one of the things that we're doing to still get our youth out there to have some income and definitely gain some work experience. There are some parent concerns that we hear occasionally also about the safety of some of these work sites, which is why it's important that as Warren County, we continue to push out the safety badge program and ensuring that businesses are following guidelines and keeping a safe space, not only for customers, but for employees as well. Are there questions about summer youth employment program before I move on to other unemployment numbers and initiatives?
Liza, are we lobbying? I'm sorry, Supervisor Hogan, give me just a second. But are we lobbying the state? Do we have Ed and Michael?
Yes. So last week, there was a big push from NIATEP, New York Association of Training and Employment Professionals, for all of us across the state to get our representatives to send letters. So yes, the chamber, Adirondack Regional Chamber, sent letters. I spoke directly with representatives from Senator and Congresswoman's office, and as well as Assembly representatives. Letters were received, and NIATEP kept documentation of all of the requests that were sent out. And we know that the governor's office and Division of Budget received a lot within the last week, a lot of concerns about it.
Supervisor Hogan, if you give me just a moment, Ryan Moore, is this something we could maybe push through the control room? We're talking about opening businesses, but we don't have the staff to do what we'd like to do. Is there any lever that we could kind of pull there to try to get up to the governor's office to maybe release some of these funds?
We've talked about it at the control room, but it's not really. We're there to do public health metrics and reopening and make sure that there's a safe reopening. And the issue has come up they've taken it up the ladder. But there's more effective avenues, I think, for that. And I would say that those effective avenues are the chambers of commerce, and we want to pass resolutions from a governmental to governmental level, urging policy decisions. I think that those would be more visible and more impactful.
Okay.
But I do want to thank Administrator Moore and making sure that the counties all were aware of it, and county administrators across the state were also advocating for the release of funds.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Chairman. Liza, I just want to say for the town of Johnsburg, the loss of the youth employment program is really huge. I think we've had as many as 6 kids working for us in a summer. And our own park superintendent, who's been with us 20 years now, came up through that program. So we value it. If there's anything that we can do to help you advocate for the release of those funds, let us know. But also, could you provide send out maybe through Amanda some sort of language that we can share to get the word out that these kids can also contact your office to try to get connected with jobs? Because I know I've been getting emails.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll do. And we also, we pushed it out to the schools as well. My youth counselor with the schools that she's usually engaging with for summer youth employment, she's given them updates and asked the youth as well to apply for current jobs that are already out there while we wait.
Supervisor Sieber. Rachel, do you have a question? Hearing none, is there any interest in the committee to try to put together a resolution to the state about the summer youth program, as suggested by Administrator Moore? No interest?
I think we should do it.
So I would need a motion from the committee to make that happen. No one interested?
We just do a letter. We could have Frank do one. Do we need a motion? Because otherwise it'll take until the board meeting or not. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, is that something you could do? Just write a letter without getting approval from the full board?
Sure, I can do whatever I want.
I'm happy to have Mr. Biddle share the letter that he sent or the conversations he had, and I'll do the same. I'll get them to Chairman Thomas and Chairman Wild.
Excellent. Thank you, Liza. Any other questions for Liza? Oh, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not on the committee, but I would support the writing of a nice ask type letter from the chairman. So, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Supervisor Driscoll. I have a couple other things I wanted to share, and then I'll let you guys go. I know you have many things. So regarding seeing where our local workforce is at in terms of getting off of unemployment, my staff make calls to local residents who are receiving unemployment benefits to see their current status. And in the last week or two, I'm estimating that about 60% of those calls, those people are saying that they have returned to work or that they're about to return to work. About 30% were getting no response. So after several attempts, no response on email or phone. We don't know if those people are avoiding the calls and because they want to remain on unemployment, or if they're back at work and not answering the phone. And then I'd say about 10% actively job seeking. So we're assisting them with letting them know the current openings. So those are the current numbers that we're seeing in terms of when we call folks. And those calls are happening weekly. Regarding other initiatives to support businesses, in addition to the employer spotlight that Don Lehman is helping us do, I'm also trying to make sure that businesses are aware of all the ways that we can support them. My office partnered with DOL and getting their job postings out there and making sure that that they have a continuity plan. So many businesses right now are operating just day to day, trying to get through each day, which I definitely understand. We're all doing the same thing. But I want to make sure that businesses know the services that are available to them, short-term and long-term. And myself working with partners, we're able to offer a lot more, but businesses aren't really taking advantage of it. And Adirondack Regional Chamber is pushing it out weekly, our business services, and we're still not getting many bites. And now I'm visiting businesses, so I'm trying to get the word out there more. But anything you all can do, I'm happy to share with you all of the business services that we can offer through my office, through our partnerships in the community, as well as with Department of Labor. For example, when Ed was speaking earlier about some of those medical companies, at least 2 of those companies are enrolled in the shared work program right now through Department of Labor, meaning that they're not at full capacity for workforce. Some of their workforce is receiving unemployment benefits while they still keep them as employees, but they're on limited hours. So it's important to know that even some of our bigger companies are struggling and are taking advantage of the shared work program, and hopefully there'll be more of a demand for some of that medical technology that will get all of their employees back to work. So that's just one example. And then the conversation guide, we pushed out, I made 5 tips for employers and having conversations with employees to make sure it's a productive and positive conversation for when they're inviting employees back to work. We really want to try to avoid conflict and tension during a high anxiety time, and make sure that those relationships are solid and the employers are nurturing those relationships with their employees as they're inviting them back to work. So we also pushed out that conversation guide. That's just a few of the many ways we're trying to be creative. I'm open to suggestions and questions and support, in making sure that many of our businesses feel the support and take advantage of it, and that they survive, and not only survive, but thrive through these economic challenges. I'm happy to take any other questions or suggestions.
Administrator Moore.
Can you say, in terms of numbers, when we're talking about people that where we're not getting these responses, where we're not reasonably confident that they're willing to go back to work, can you talk about the raw numbers, or can you not?
We have those numbers based on the calls that they make, and they're making those calls every week. So, for example, each of my employees has a list of 40 or 50 employees or job seekers that they're calling. So I could get those numbers to you.
It's really not important. I was just curious. And I mean, how aggressive can we be? Can we send them info for a job fair of the employers that are looking for, we said have the 100 or so, hotels employment opportunities, I guess. Yeah. And the key word you said is aggressive. How aggressive can we be? Because we used to require, the Department of Labor temporarily stopped the requirement of job seeking when jobs weren't available, right? And so now we have many jobs available. So we're trying to get those folks to get back into the routine of seeking jobs and showing it. They have to show that they've been to a job fair, they've applied to several jobs, and making sure that that's part of the routine again. That's also my conversation with social services. I have another meeting with them this week, and making sure that those social services referrals, that we're getting those folks back to work as well, which we were able to do in January and February, and we're anxious to get that program going again. Okay. Any role for us to do a resolution or a letter to some higher level of government?
Not that I can think of right now. I definitely will reach out. I just need folks, all of the businesses that you have contacts with friends, neighbors, family, colleagues, to really check in with them and see how they're doing short-term and long-term, and what their needs are. So even though the Adirondack Regional Chamber has done surveys and Lake George Chamber has done surveys, we see what the needs are. They're reporting what the needs are. We have the services to help them, but they're not really taking advantage of it. So what I'm going to try to do is really, see if I can even get a call list to speak directly with those businesses about what we can offer them.
Great. Any other questions for Liza? Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks, Supervisor Wild. Liza, can you just give us a quick rundown of what those business services are? I sent you an email this morning saying I would try to push out through social media and reach out to the business owners who I know. But what do I tell them that we can do for them besides, I guess, connecting them with employees?
Yes. So in addition to the job posting and the recruiting and matching that we can do, a lot of businesses are posting on Indeed, which is fine, but they pay for that service and we can push it out for free and it'll go to thousands more people through the DOL email distribution list. So that's one example.
Are those local people that you push out to?
Yeah, it really goes statewide, but people are able to search by region. So that's one example. No problem. That's one example of the business services. There are many businesses that are still operating remotely or partially remotely, and they've struggled with how to lead those teams remotely. So I'm working with consultants and trainers in the area who are able to offer some of those support programs and webinars, and that's proven effective for the people that take advantage of it. And then continuity plans that I mentioned earlier. So kind of seeing where their numbers land currently and with the summer, and then thinking long term. If something like this were to happen again, or God forbid we have another shutdown, what is their plan? We want to make sure that businesses are prepared so that they can survive through this. So I've partnered with 3 financial consultants, and all of them offer something a little bit different. And I'm trying to kind of triage based off what their needs are and what their interests are to get them to the best person who can assist them. And these consultants and trainers are local. So I'm also supporting those businesses with this combined effort.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
And I will email you, Supervisor Bramer, I'll email you the business services flyers, or I'm happy to send that out to more folks if there's an interest.
Okay, and I thought I saw that Don Lehman was going to push something out, so I can always just copy and paste what he uses.
Yes, he has pushed them out in the last month, especially as we went into phase 2. And so we'll continue to keep pushing that out. But
yeah, it's probably worth another round of going out there. Yep, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan, I need to leave some time for Wayne. So Supervisor Hogan, then I have a question for Mr. Bartholomew. If you don't mind, Ed, if you can hang on for a couple more minutes.
No, Mike, I was just letting Liza know that I'd like those flyers too if she's sending them out. Thank you.
Will do.
So Ed, one of the things that we struggle with, Liza's struggling with as well as our other employers, is this $600 weekly stipend from the feds. And I'm wondering if you've heard anything in the grapevine that you're attached to about the next stimulus bill, whether they're still considering that or some other method to entice people to get back to work.
I think it comes down to some in Washington agree with our concerns on that. Others are less far supportive of taking those monies away. Others have said that will reduce the amount of money. What has been suggested by a number of elected officials, and we've mentioned that as well, is a elimination or severe reduction in the payroll tax for the employer and the employee that would stimulate immediately back to work and help the employer that perhaps would consider providing other alternative services to the employee returning, as well as the employee would have a little bit more in the paycheck. And I think that seems to be gaining a little bit of strength in Washington, going forward, Mike. But it's unclear, and it leads into the that big question is really the lack of interest on moving forward with funds for states and counties and municipalities. It seems to have lost its initiative in the wake of other serious issues in the country. But I know that Ryan is advocating that every moment he can get. We are doing the same to our legislators to incorporate that. But this was exactly why we pushed so hard seems like years ago, to get money for municipalities back in round 2 instead of now. This is exactly what has happened, is that it's been delay, and then they'll be on recess again. And I know that our local congressperson, Stefanik, has pledged for help and recognizes the need for that. So I'm very confident with that. It's just, I think it makes it very difficult for everybody's budgets to figure out from a municipal side as to where this is going to go.
You said, Liza, briefly.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the House and the Senate are divided. No surprise there. So yesterday I sent another communication to Senator Gillibrand's office about the impacts on our region if that extra unemployment is extended beyond July 31st.
Thank you. Any other questions, Administrator Moore?
Was there a response to that?
No, she's communicating to the senator. Sarah's communicating to the senator about it. I sent all of the numbers, right? The tourism impacts. Not yet. As soon as I get a response, I'll let you know. I am also in touch with Congresswoman Stefanik's office, and they are working on this as well.
Anybody in touch with Schumer?
I have not been.
I have been, and no decision on that issue yet. He understands the issues. We're keep pushing him there. One question I have for Liza. Liza, how many? What is the distinction between the J1 program of how many youth that provided in the past, and how many jobs that are still vacant in that area? Is that because of the J1, or is there an additional percentage of jobs that have not been filled by our locals? So in other words, I'm just trying to determine if there's a real vacuum, or is this fairly common at this point of the year that we have a certain percentage of people that just aren't going to go to work?
Yeah, thank you for that question. This is not fairly common for this time of year. So in my conversations with Gina Menser, Lake George Chamber, she shared that we normally have around 1,000 J1 workers, and some of them do more than one job. But what's hard to gauge with these numbers is that with half capacity and maybe not, tourism at full, at what we usually see right now, it's hard to determine what the exact need is. However, when I'm visiting the businesses, they are telling me that this is the work that their J1s would be doing. And so, yes, there's a greater need, but it's not all of the J1 jobs that we're used to seeing.
Right. Thank you. That helps.
Thank you, Ed. And Mr. Biddle asked that I pass along a hello. I'm happy that you guys are working so well together on all our issues. So any other questions for Liza before we move over to planning? Seeing none. Wayne, Sarah, and Chris, you guys are finally up. Thank you for your patience. You guys still there?
Yeah. Have we moved over to planning?
We have.
Okay. You have a agenda packet that was provided, hopefully. I have one resolution request, and in the materials provided, you'll find the minutes from the October meeting where we discussed, or Sarah discussed, the purchase of the artwork and the resizing and whatever of the posters from the Lake George Visitor Center, and the committee approval to do that. I think part of the confusion came in the last sentence that's been highlighted. It says the resolution is not necessary for this action. So what happened is we went ahead and purchased the artwork and the material, the resizing, and out of last year's budget. And the treasurer's office has allocated that against our existing contract with Advocate. So in essence, it got added. The funds were deducted from our available balance on the contract, but yet this was not a contract item. So there's two ways we could go with this, is either to amend the contract or have the committee authorize a one-time expenditure. I've been going back and forth with the county attorney's office. Again, they're on a staggered rotating staffing. So, I haven't been able to always be in contact with Amy there. So the gist of it is we need to authorize this as a one-time payment or amend the contract, whatever the treasurer's office and the county attorney's office deems is the best alternative. My preference, I guess, would be to add it to the contract, and that's the resolution request that's in front of you. This, again, these funds were already expensed. They were 2019 funds. We did the expenditure based on the committee request and authorization, but the paperwork didn't follow it up. And I think, as I said, I think the confusion was that a resolution was not necessary. I think looking back at it, a resolution was not necessary to acquire, either take funding out of contingency or whatever, and that really reflected or was directed at that we didn't need a resolution for the finances, and it kind of got dropped from the contract amendment process. So we'd like to clean that up and have our full funding and deliverables from Advocate, through 2020 and 2021. So I'd ask the committee's consideration of this.
So moved.
Bring it to the floor. Supervisor Hogan.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Leggett. Thank you. Discussion? Supervisor Hogan.
They've done an excellent job. Please thank them for us. That's all. They really have.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think Sarah and Advocate have worked very well together, and I think the product is indicative of that. And it's why we're trying to continue our relationship with them for social media outreach and other products.
So, Wayne, I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. Is there any potential issue with us doing this resolution instead of, the way you're describing it? I was a little confused.
No, we're just kind of doing a housekeeping. I think, based on my discussions with the county attorney's office, we just need to kind of clean this up based on the October minutes. The committee already kind of said, go ahead, but there was no formal resolution. So we need to formalize that process from before.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions for Wayne? With that, we're going to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion is passed. Wayne, anything else on the agenda for you today?
I have one thing that's not on the agenda, and I'd like to discuss it briefly. Over the course of the past year or so, we've been talking about working with EDC and the LDC on a housing market analysis. Matter of fact, I believe on the LDC side of it, there's going to be a request to approve that agreement with the LDC and the EDC. We are actually, the county is a third party to that as far as providing the administrative services. Robert from the county attorney's office has been working on the agreement, and Division of Housing Community Renewal has kind of provided some of the language on that. I know you don't have it in front of you. The county's responsibility is kind of just overall management of selecting the consultant and working with the consultant. There's really not a financial obligation. And if the committee would be receptive, I'd ask that they consider a resolution to be like the third signature of that EDC LDC agreement, that we would provide some administrative oversight and work with be the primary office working with the consultant and directing the product. As I said, I know you don't have the agreement in front of you. It can wait till next month, although EDC board has already approved it, and it will be on, I believe, a topic of discussion on the LDC meeting next. So if we can't move anything forward, then that whole process will wait another month before we can release an RFP and get moving on that. I apologize that you don't have the agreement. I have seen the draft of it, and I know Robert's been working on it, but it's been pretty much between the LDC and the EDC that's been working on that. So I quite honestly, I never did get a final copy, but I do have some of the draft materials, and I know what our responsibility would be at the county. So I'm comfortable recommending to the committee that we do a resolution, to sign on to the agreement. But if the committee so chooses to wait till next month, I can understand.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would be good to see that agreement and to get this clear. The county is participating in this. They are a third party in the housing study and will actually be administering some of the work and along with the be in conference with the consultant. Is that correct?
That is correct. The financial obligation of the county is for staff time only. There's no cash expenditure, but yes, basically you summarized it very well.
Any other questions? Supervisor Hogan?
As you know, I have been anxiously awaiting this study and I fully support it. Is there any consequence to waiting another month so that everybody can see the agreement?
Not really, other than just it's another month down the road, you know. And that's why I was hesitant to bring it up. Pat sent me an email yesterday and asked if we could discuss this, and I said, well, it's not part of the agenda, and they haven't seen it, but I don't know if you've seen it from the LDC side. It's the same agreement that the LDC, I believe, will be considering. I don't know, is Ed still on here?
The LDC members received that last Friday.
Okay.
The agreement.
And, yeah. So again,
and essentially the terms of it is that the LDC and the EDC will each be committing financially, to your point, Wayne, $10,000 respectively to assist with the consultant that will be going through an RFQ process here.
Ed, from your perspective, is there any consequence to another month's delay?
We would like to have gotten the study going right now, recognizing the process and procedure of the county. I respect that process. Patricia has been working on this for full disclosure, and myself in terms of looking and developing the RFQ. So the minute that this gets through the final processing here, you know, Patricia will have that. She's been working very closely with the state representative on it, and also gathering up some data internally. So I think that they're in Patricia's experience in housing and with Wayne, I think it's not going to be a delay of consequences at this point. It's more kind of a little frustration in the bureaucracy. That's all, to be honest with you. But understand it, and we'll comply with it and get it going. But it won't be. It's not going to be a disaster. If it was a disaster, I tell you, but it's not.
Supervisor Hogan, then Supervisor Leggett.
No, Craig can take it.
I have that agreement. If I share the screen, I can pull it up to where the whereas that pertains to the county, everybody could see, so that we're comfortable, if that would help expedite the process. And I see Ms. Sieber, Supervisor Sieber, with her hand up. I know she likes everybody to see agreements. So.
Yes, Supervisor Leggett, if I can jump in, I appreciate the intro. I'm sorry, I was trying to do it on video, but these buttons for lower and raising hands, I think, are tough to see. I'm really concerned about that. And Ed, I know that I give you a ton of credit and everyone working on it, but we have really been trying hard in the last few months to push to see these contracts ahead of time. What I'm hearing is that other boards have had an opportunity to see a draft. And if you are looking for a resolution from this board, I would think we would have the ability to see that draft as well. It sounds like something that, our board would be supportive of, just knowing the members, but I still think that we've gotten ourselves in trouble in the past before. And I, for one, do not want to be voting on a contract that I haven't seen. I'm one member of this committee, and certainly the board can still pass it. But I think out of a matter of respect for our policies and procedures, this is something we should see. And those last minute additions are tough to take when they're not urgent. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I'm getting back off this video screen.
Amanda, is there a chance we can allow Supervisor Leggett to share a screen?
I have to go get Tammy. She had to step out for a minute. She's the one running the Zoom. So if you can hold on for a minute, I can do that. Or if you'd like, I can just email it if Mr. Nope, never mind. It's going.
She's there.
So here, where is it? Whereas the county planning department facilitate the collection of housing information. So I'll refer to Wayne. Is that the county's main part right there?
That and again, I have not seen the final of this, so that's there. There wasn't a draft that the county would basically facilitate. Okay. Three entities, party. Oh, and the county planning staff will oversee and facilitate the process. I mean, that's there was something in the draft on that. I don't know if that made it all the way through. It should have. It was in the whereases. So
Yeah.
it's probably on the previous page.
From my perspective, if the committee doesn't approve it today, we'll basically have a 2-month delay before we can go out for an RFQ. That means we won't see it until next week. It'll be basically almost a month before the full board meets again. So
Yeah.
I have to ask, I guess, what is the opinion of the committee?
Mike?
Supervisor Hogan, I can't see
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to be the hypocrite and say in this case we need to throw process out the door. You know, I just asked us all to tighten it up, and I agree with that. We've been talking about this study since 2018, right, Wayne?
Yes. Yes.
I don't, you know, and so I have no problem with the delay so that we have time to really look at this and digest it and discuss it as a committee in an informed way. You know, as to pointing out that it will be a 2-month delay, I'm just going to point out that, you know, in the past, this committee has had absolutely no problem having a special meeting if they need to address a specific issue. So that's all I have to say there.
That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah, agreed.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
You know, I brought this up just, and as I said, I prefaced it, if the committee was willing to discuss it, I fully understand you didn't have the agreement. And I didn't know how far the agreement was shared from the same members of the committee who were on the LDC committee. So, yeah, I mean, it would be August before this would start if nothing's taken. But I fully understand that the committee's not had a chance to look at the document, except for those members that are also sit on the LDC board. So, again, I was bringing it up on the off chance that the committee would discuss it. I didn't expect you to. And quite honestly, I told Patricia this morning that there was no way we were going to bring it on the agenda, but I did, you know, kind of write myself a note and realize that the EDC board has already approved it. It will go to the LDC board. And so on the off chance that we wouldn't hold everything up until the August board meeting, I thought I'd throw it out there. I fully respect the process and understand that there are some members who haven't seen it. You know, we'll hold off and bring it back through the process as normal.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thanks, Supervisor Wild. Just quick, Wayne, thanks for bringing it up, though. I mean, it does help us to like get our brains, you know, get focused on what we need to think about. And the other comment I had is, do we really need to wait? Because if this isn't something, if the RFQ, maybe I'm wrong, is not going out through the planning department, can't EDC do their own thing? They don't need to wait for us necessarily. Maybe I'm wrong.
The way it was structured, Claudia, is that it essentially is EDC is financially contributing the money. I thought that we kind of all agreed that historically and presently the expertise for affordable housing and housing in general has rested with Patricia and Wayne over the years, that it made more sense for the planning department to have greater oversight on this project. And so therefore, it's not, we're more than happy to sit and work on the committee. We participated in the range for the first meeting, but felt that we wanted to pass the baton over to Wayne and Patricia to work alongside them. So I was not aware of this until yesterday. EDC went ahead after we received the contract from Patricia, actually, from the county attorney's office, and had put it, and we adopted this last Tuesday, and then planned on the meeting with our LDC coming up at 10:30. We're 2 minutes late for that right now for approval, and was not aware that it needed to go to the county. Once Patricia explained that and so forth, I understood the reason why it needed to go to the county, because of county staff involved in this. So I think the idea that the supervisor has mentioned of a special meeting would be appropriate to consider by the chair and the board to move this along, if that's within the jurisdiction.
Mr. Chairman, this is Peter.
Yes, Peter.
We have had, the LDC board has had this agreement since Friday. So I've looked at it. It's not the most complicated documents I've ever seen. It's pretty plain vanilla. And as it relates to Wayne, the last page of the document, page 5, says it be it further resolved that the Warren County Purchasing Department will assist with soliciting the RFP, and the Warren County Planning Department will provide staff services for the report, as well as the administration of the funds to complete the project, period. That's the intent of our planning department, to help assist, and with Pat Tadish at the helm, we're in very good hands. So I guess my point is, this is a fairly simple agreement. And I suspect we will approve it at the LDC meeting, which will follow this one.
Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt. My intention is to most likely call a special meeting next week. Wayne, once it's approved by the LDC, then that pretty much locks the document. So we won't be able to make any revisions to that necessarily without having to go back through the EDC and the LDC again, correct?
That would be my understanding. I think the Robert from the county attorney's office would have the final say on that. But basically, the EDC and the LDC will be committing the funding for it. So
okay. So if I can ask, could you get that out to all the committee members of this committee, and I'll ask Amanda. Maybe the committee members can get with Amanda and figure out when next week, or even later this week, we could have a short meeting. Just to review this document and see if we can avoid that 2-month delay, if that's the pleasure of the committee. Any objections? Okay. Anything else for us to discuss today? Ed has so graciously reminded me that we're 2 minutes over.
That's quite all right, Mr. Chair.
With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Bramer, Supervisor Hogan, thank you all. Meeting is adjourned.